What is up, Master Duelists, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh video. Today we're talking about Radiant Typhoon releasing in Master Duel. I'm going to explain the deck a little bit for the people that haven't been playing the TCG recently and are mainly following me for my Master Duel content. I'm going to go over an example deck list and explain to you what the deck is trying to do so you can better play it and play against it. And then we'll also look at a couple of games from my stream to showcase how the deck functions in the actual game. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know your thoughts on the new deck in the comments down below. And without further ado, let's get started. All right, so here we have a example deck list for Radiant Typhoon. And yes, this one does have Harpy's Featherstorm. This is the list that I started playing on my stream today. Ultimately, I ended up taking the Harpy's Featherstorm out of the deck, and I will show you how the deck list would look without it, but I just wanted to put that information out there that this card is technically playable in this deck and is really powerful because Radiant Typhoon Crocea is a wind-winged beast, so the deck has the ability to play this card. Ultimately, I decided to remove it from the deck after a couple of matches on stream today because I felt like it was better to play a card that either helps me make the deck more consistent or helps me actually break boards going second. But I'm just not a big fan of this card in general, but you know, this is the list I started playing because you're going to see it in the replays later. The cards themselves, Radiant Typhoon is an archetype that is focused around Mystical Space Typhoon, a really old and classic Yu-Gi-Oh card. Target one spell trap on the field, destroy that target, simple as that. And they decided to make an archetype around that, which I think is pretty awesome. So there's a lot of synergies with quick play spells, and it's a really grindy deck that draws cards, recycles cards, and stuff like that. And it actually does make MST negate. So you want to think of the Radiant Typhoon cards in different categories. I think it's best if you want to memorize what they do. They've got the small main deck monsters, they've got the big main deck monsters, and then they've got the spells and the traps. The small main deck monsters all have one thing in common. If you have Mystical Space Typhoon in your grave or the opponent controls no spell traps, you can special summon them from your hand. This is Swen, Eldam, as well as Megala. All three of them have that ability, which makes them inherently stronger when you're going first because your opponent is not going to have spell traps yet. If you're going second, you can only normal summon them, or you have to use Mystical Space Typhoon first if your opponent is playing spell and traps. So that is that, but they can be very powerful starters and extenders because you can just special summon them for free. Eldam on summon will search for a monster, Radiant Typhoon monster or Mystical Space Typhoon. Swen on summon will search for a Radiant Typhoon spell trap or a Mystical Space Typhoon. And Megala will, if you activate a Radiant Typhoon quick play spell or Mystical Space Typhoon, summon any Radiant Typhoon from your deck with a different name from the monsters you control. This one, most importantly, also works on your opponent's turn, so usually you want to establish this card on your field and then keep it around for your opponent's turn, because then you can do it again. Whereas for Swen and Eldam, once they are on the field, you can exceed with them or link with them or whatever the bodies, you can just use them and make an extra deck monster out of it. So those are basically like your bread and butter consistency pieces. Those get your cards together. And then Radiant Typhoon Crocea is probably the most powerful card of this deck, and also the choke point if you're trying to interrupt this deck when you're going second. This is where, if possible, you want to Ash, you want to Imperm, you want to Veiler, and so on and so forth, because Crocea can summon from hand if a quick play spell card is activated. Now, most importantly, this is any quick play spell, not Mystical Space Typhoon or Radiant Typhoon, and also it can be your opponent's quick play spell. So if you are activating a quick play spell, your opponent can summon Crocea from their hand on your turn. If this card is normal or special, you can add a Radiant Typhoon card and or one MST from deck or grave to your hand. So this card just searches two cards upon summon, a Radiant Typhoon card and a Mystical Space Typhoon, which is obviously really powerful. And with this deck, you can often try to do this on every turn. You know, you can bring it out on your opponent's turn when a quick play spell is activated, or with Megala, and so on and so forth. So this is how you really keep your resources together. This is how you get all the cards in your hand. And then the really big Radiant Typhoons are Radiant Typhoon Varurun, the Vibrant Vortex, as well as Radiant Typhoon Phoenix, the Great Flame, which are level 9, and both have the exact same conditions. If a quick play spell is activated, you can summon it from your hand. And if a Mystical Space Typhoon is activated while it's in the grave, you can summon it from their grave. That's what both of them do. And it's important to note that both of these effects are separate effects. So you can use each of them once per turn. You can summon Phoenix from hand, for example, when a quick play spell is activated. Then you can link it off, and then you can activate MST and still bring it back out from the graveyard. You know, these are not both on one effect. They can both activate 2 times per turn. And then Phoenix is removal, because if a quick play spell is activated, you can target up to 2 cards on the opponent's field and shuffle them into the deck. And Varurun is a monster negate if you have Mystical Space Typhoon in your grave, and even destroys if you have 2 Mystical Space Typhoons. Most importantly, this is a trigger effect on Phonics. This does not chain to a quick play spell. It activates on a new chain after the quick play spell has resolved. And this is also the case with all of their summoning conditions. Then we have the Radiant Typhoon Link 2. It needs any 2 Radiant Typhoon monsters. If it's Link summoned, it adds an MST from deck or grave. Then it has a removal effect where you can target 2 face-up monsters on the field, including a Radiant Typhoon, to place them in the spell trap zones as continuous spells. And if a quick play spell is activated, you can place a Radiant Typhoon continuous trap from your deck or grave face-up on your field. This card is amazing, and you're going to see why if we go over the spells and the traps. So all of the Radiant Typhoon quick play spells have the same layout to them as well. They all have 2 effects, and you can use each effect per turn. So if you draw 2 copies of the Radiant Typhoon quick plays, you can use both. You just have to use different effects each time. So they all have the effect to add Mystical Space Typhoon from the deck or grave to your hand, which you're going to use a lot because you really want MSTs in this deck. Or in the case of Radiant Typhoon Chant, you can add a level 4 or lower Radiant Typhoon monster from your deck to your hand. So this basically searches your little guys. Radiant Typhoon Vision, once again, add MST from deck or grave to your hand, or draw 2 cards and then discard a Radiant Typhoon or quick play spell. This is basically trade-in for the deck, but you draw first before you discard, so it's really, really strong. And this card also has a lot of great applications in other decks. For example, in Sky Striker or any other deck that plays a lot of quick play spells, you can just go draw 2, discard 1. Really good card. I'm going to experiment with this in Sky Striker a lot as well. Really looking forward to that. Amazing card overall, but also in this deck, of course. And then they've got Radiant Typhoon Ascendance, which is special summon a level 6 or lower Radiant Typhoon from your grave, or search MST. As well as there's also Radiant Typhoon Manifestation, which is a Foolish Burial for Radiant Typhoons, which I'm currently not using because you can technically send the level 9s to the grave and then bring them back if Mystical Space Typhoon is activated, but quite frankly, space is tight in this deck, so at the moment I don't use it. And then we've got the main thing probably for this deck, the main thing that makes it grindy and also the thing that makes Mystical Space Typhoon negate is Radiant Typhoon Mandate. Once per turn, you can target 3 quick plays in your grave, including a Radiant Typhoon, shuffle them into the deck, draw a card, and also all wind monsters will gain 300 attack this turn and defense. But once per chain, when Mystical Space Typhoon is activated, you can target a face-up card your opponent controls and negate its effects. This is what makes MST negate, and this is also why the Link monster in particular is so good. Basically, upon summon, you search Mystical Space Typhoon, and then when a quick play is activated, you get the trap for free. It places it, it doesn't set it, so you can use the draw immediately on your first turn, which is awesome. And then every MST that you search is technically a way to negate a face-up card. Now, there's a lot of caveats to this, because this is actually kind of easy to play around, but the deck searches 2 or 3 Mystical Space Typhoons, so it's unlikely your opponent is going to be able to outplay all of them. But the way this works is you have to chain it immediately to Mystical Space Typhoon. This can be chain blocked, basically. Let's say your opponent activates Mitsurugi Ritual, and you want to negate it with Mystical Space Typhoon, so you're going to chain Mystical Space Typhoon, but then your opponent chains Mitsurugi Prayers. Now you've missed your activation window for Radiant Typhoon Mandate. You have to chain directly to MST, so they can dodge it that way, right? Also, of course, you have to target a card and negate its effects. So if the card leaves the field before that resolves, it doesn't work. It's like Dracotail Flame in that regard. Like, let's say your opponent normal summons Aramasa, you chain MST, chain Mandate, try to negate Aramasa, and then your opponent goes chain Prayers, tribute the Aramasa, it's no longer there, and then it won't be negated, right? So there's a lot of ways to outplay it, but if used correctly, then basically every Mystical Space Typhoon is going to negate a card your opponent controls, which is pretty powerful. That's the idea of the deck. Basically, you're trying to generate card advantage. You're trying to build a board. You're trying to get the continuous trap with as many Mystical Space Typhoons as possible to negate some of your opponent's important actions. You're trying to get a removal from Phonics. You're trying to get a monster negation from Barurun, and then maybe some generic wind extra deck pieces, as well as just a lot of card advantage because you keep resolving Crocea over and over until you outgrind your opponent. The rest of the extra deck is pretty standard, not that important because the deck really only needs the Link 2. Everything else is kind of just like a couple of good stuff. Wind monsters, because Crocea and Megala lock you into wind. There's Totem Bird, Bamboozling, Gossip Shadow, Cicada King as your rank 3 options. The 2 big guys are level 9s, so that's why this card is here. Typhoon and SP just for good stuff. We got Win, we've got Great Fly, Doom Eagle, and Samorg, as well as a Harpy Conductor, so we can use Featherstorm from the hand. In general, after my first testing, like I said earlier, I decided against playing the Harpy's Featherstorm, but you could. And then there's also Sheena, which is an amazing card for wind decks. When your opponent activates a card or effect while you control a wind monster, you can special it from the hand. Apply the following effect based on what was activated. If a monster effect was activated, you return all monsters on the field to the hand except Sheena. And then spell traps, you return all spell traps on the field to the hand. This card is quite frankly amazing, and I did bump it up to 3 in the version without Featherstorm in any deck that has a lot of wind monsters, but it's also in the new pack, so you're not going to want to miss out on that one. So quickly, I'm going to show you the version that I ended up playing after I removed the Featherstorms, so you can decide for yourself whether you want to play the Featherstorm or not, but I replaced it in this build with a 3rd copy of Sheena, a 2nd copy of Ascendance, as well as 1 Noble Knight's Shield Bearer, which you can banish from your hand to add a level 6 or lower wind beast from your deck to your hand, which is Eldam. So this is basically a pseudo starter for the deck as well, because it just searches Eldam, which is good, because the deck can sometimes struggle with consistency. Anyways, that was a little bit of a breakdown of what the Radiant Typhoon cards do and what the deck list could look like that you can start testing with. I had a decent amount of success with this on stream today. We made it all the way to Master 1 with it in a pretty smooth session. So hope you enjoyed that. Let me know your thoughts on this sort of like breakdown for new archetypes. Is this something that you are far too advanced for already because you're playing the TCG anyways, or do you appreciate this sort of breakdown in the beginning? Without further ado, we've got a couple of games lined up with Radiant Typhoon so that we can also see the deck in action. Don't forget to like and subscribe and enjoy the games. Does the target of MST matter when you're trying to negate? No. All that matters is that you chain the trap effect directly to a mystical space typhoon. You can even negate monsters with the trap. The only downside is that your opponent can chain block it. Like when you try to hit something with MST negate and they chain something to it, you cannot stop that. The MST needs to chain directly to the thing. I feel like here, if my Crocia gets ashed, I'm probably fine. And I don't really... I mean, I could have chain blocked it. I could have gone Special Swen, search a spell, then make Link 2, search MST. Yeah, maybe I should have. I'll go... Should I draw 2 with this hand? I kind of want to draw 2. Try to draw some non-engine, so I'll filter first. This adds Ascendance. Make 2. So I was planning on self-MSTing Ascendance. And I think I still will. Even though I have a second one. Because I want to trigger Rune in the grave. I'll just use the other one to search MST again. Gotta leave one space in the grave for the monster negate. Nice Fuwa. Alright, go. Should 6k be enough for Radiant if I already have the stables except some org? Yeah, I would think so. Chain MST here is a little bit annoying, but I think it's fine. Yeah, we'll get MST back later. We'll get him later. I like this deck, but this is 4 negates, basically a man board at this point. It is so vastly different from an Odeon end board. It's crazy how different these negations are. I uploaded a video about this like last week where I discussed different forms of negation. There's no way this is even close to comparable. Can't you chain block the MST negates? Yes, every single one of them. That is one of the reasons why it's different. I want to hold the Sheena as long as possible. Yeah, they just, I mean, even the existing board, they don't really get through. But, yeah. Does the summon from deck lock you into wins? Yes. Oh. Oh. a Feather Storm kind of game. Well, the problem is this hand is actually pretty bad into one hand trap. Yep. I legit cannot play the game. This is the problem, right? This is genuinely a problem of Featherstorm. Is like if this was a Noble Knight's Shield Bearer, I would be winning right now, right? But it's not. It's Featherstorm, which begs the question of, does this deck need Featherstorm? I'm not sure. I hope it's Odeon, I guess. Okay. Well, it's not yummy. I was waiting for this. I was waiting to play against someone on a stun deck with this deck. I shouldn't fire off all 3 MSTs immediately, I think. Nice try. Okay, now I'm a little sad. Now I'm a little sad I didn't hold 1 MST in hand. Okay. I think I have to draw with this vision. If I MST this card, I think I win, right? Special Swen, they negate with this. I make Link 2. Oh no, but then I don't have... Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I'm so happy. I'm so happy that we ran into this matchup so early. I needed this. And I guess I say this before we have technically won, but I'm pretty sure we are fine here. This guy. Honestly, I think I get rid of the bodies. I don't care about Dimensional Fissure. What happens? What happens if I use this on one of these? Do they go face up in the spell trap zone, like completely useless? I guess we'll try for science. I think that's how it works. That does make win for Great Fly. Oh, Featherstorm is live. Let's go. We made Featherstorm live. Does this have to go to grave? Destroyed by battle? No. I can also SP. I'm not locked. Ooh, some more. Oh, wait. Okay, I did not think that this was going to come up so early, but this is crazy here. Sack. 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 God, that's powerful. Goodbye, Odeon Andy. Stun someone else. Ash Vision? Okay. They have to have a way to negate this. Yeah, wait. Well, that doesn't negate it. That's Fuwa. Okay. Sure. Eh? Okay, that just goes... That's crazy. This deck doesn't really care about Uva. So I'm a little confused. I mean, the Fuva is going to get a second draw here, but kind of whatever. It does care about Perulia. Yeah, absolutely does. The only question is it worth giving a draw for Totem Bird? I think the answer is yes. Okay. This negates the activation. I don't want to negate the activation. Every time I've activated MST today, someone in chat has said, "Oh my god, MST negates." It's the funniest thing y'all have ever seen. So technically I have ways to negate both halves of the ritual spell. I have one more MST and I have Totem Bird, which could be really problematic for them. Also, I still have the monster negate from this. One down. Habakiri. I will allow Habakiri. I'll just negate Saji with Orun. Technically I could let them search, but I also don't want them to have like a dodge for this MST or a chain block, and then the ritual spell resolve. Like for example, if they already have ritual spell, they could search Magatama, and that would be really problematic. Okay, they have Ice Ryzeal. Fine. They win, you lose. It's not impossible, genuinely. This setup, like, for decks with strong engines, the Radiant Typhoon setup is not unbeatable. Which is the nice thing about it. It's got really strong grind game, and honestly, it is hard to play through. Their hand needed to be really strong for this. But it's not unbeatable. I was hoping for a non-engine there. Here's the thing. I technically don't really care about the Ryziel stuff, but if I let them search here, they can negate my... if they have another ritual spell, they can always do it, is what I'm trying to say. Because if I let them get to Detonator, they always have a chain block for my MST. Alright, and that was my first experience with Radiant Typhoon. Honestly, I've been having a pretty good time today. I like the deck quite a bunch. It can grind pretty well. I had some really good games going second as well, but they were really long and grindy, so I couldn't quite fit them into a main channel video because I wanted to showcase what the deck can do going first and kind of like what the combos are. And that's harder to see when you're breaking a board going second, but I still had some really good ones. Some of those will make it onto the Plus channel, and if they're not going to make it onto the Plus channel, they're definitely going to be in the VOD on the VOD channel. So those links are in the description down below for the people that want to see more gameplay of this deck, where I go over the plays and everything. You know, of course, you can watch me live on Twitch, or you can watch the VOD or the Plus uploads in the channels linked down below. So I would appreciate if you checked those out as well. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you all so much. Leave me some feedback in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time, Duelists. Bye-bye. Peace.